Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. Hi, everybody. Granddaughter Crow here with yet another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. And quite frankly, ever since I started this podcast, there is a special guest that I've been wanting to have on, but she's been busy writing books, empowering people, liberating us. And I've had these discussions around having this wonderful person that I'm about ready to introduce to you with one of my wonderful, wonderful sisters, Shone. She has been on the show. We've done a lot of activities together, and I'm like, Miss Sherry. And she's like, I almost let it slip who we have today, who we have today. But before I introduce, I really want to send this out in a very sacred way. Today is a very sacred dialogue among powerful spiritual women who embody their ancestors to bring forth liberation, to bring forth empowerment, to bring forth, I don't have to explain who I am here, and this is what I have to say. So awesome. Welcome into this space. Welcome into this time. I'm going to draw a circle around this space, around this time. I'm going to set my ego outside and declare this space as sacred space, a sacred time. I invite in the ancestors to this dialogue where we sit around a fire and chat together about the beauty of the world and how to be liberated, how to be empowered, how to be yourself. May the divine, as it reveals itself to you, come forth and listen to our wonderful dialogue. So without further ado, I do have Miss Sherry Shone, author of so many books. And oh, my Hoodoo Bible is right behind me. Hoodoo Guide for Everyone. I love Miss Sherry. Today we have Mawiyah Kai EL-Jamah Bomani with us. Welcome, Sherry Shone and Mawiyah.
Mawiya, Mawiya, Mawiya.
Yay, yay.
I am so excited. Now, Sherry and I have talked a lot about what you do because you fall right in line with what we do. We bring liberation, we bring empowerment to marginalized people, we bring our ancestors. And I want to kind of touch base on this just a minute. When I met Sherry, I saw sunshine. I saw sunshine. And when I see you, I see fierce warrior goddess,
Mhm.
and bringing that. And when I was talking to Sherry years ago, she started talking about hoodoo. And I was like, is it okay if I ask? I'm indigenous shaman. Is it okay? Am I allowed to ask about hoodoo? And Sherry and I sat on a panel of all different spiritual paths and Wicca and Norse and ceremonial magic, and we sat on like almost sandwiched to these other spiritual groups,
Yeah,
and which I
yeah,
think
yeah.
was very apropos. And all of a sudden they're like asking us questions. How do you see this in your belief system? Sherry's like, the ancestors. And I'm all, that was my answer. And then
Mhm.
I would say some things and they'd say, well, what kind of like tools do you need for your sacred magic? And it's like household tools, the natural world.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Sherry's like, that's my magic. And it
Mhm.
gave me the permission to start investigating hoodoo, all
Mhm.
respect. And now you're here, Mawiya. Let me before we start, and I am ahead of myself, my dear. I know who you are. For those of you who haven't heard of Mawiya, let me just kind of give
Mm,
you a little bit
mm,
of insight. So Mawiya is a native New Orleans and is a distinguished writer and spiritual woman. Her work has been featured in notable publications. She's the author of several plays and she's received the Southern Black Theater Festival's 2012 2013 Playwright of the Year Award for her play Spring Chickens. So much magic in this woman. In 2008, Mawiya earned her MFA in creative writing from the University of New Orleans. Beyond her writing, she is a respected educator, big time. When you pick up her books, when you listen to her podcast, when you know her, you get educated. She's also an
Mhm,
eighth
mhm.
generation witch, priestess of Oya and the Yoruba spiritual systems. Mawiyah is also the host of the podcast Fish Heads in Red Gravy, which celebrates marginalized people in the esoteric and occult world. I'm over the moon. I have no words.
I don't.
Sherry, before we talk to Mawiyah, could you tell us a little bit about how you got in contact? Because I know you wrote the foreword for, she now has two books,
My
which are so
goodness.
powerful. And I know that you wrote the foreword for Conjuring the Calabash, and
Yes.
I love it. Tell us a
So
little.
honored, so honored. So when I first started with writing my books, Hoodoo Guide to the Bible and Hoodoo for Everyone, it was very distinctive for me to find other authors who were willing to share the gift, the legacy, the beauty, the trauma, the tragedy of hoodoo,
Right.
and say it in a way that was honoring and not indicative of, I'm going to take what Ancestor has done. I'm going to take
Shane.
what other Black women have done. I'm going to take
Mhm.
what other Black men have done and try to make it a TikTok.
Yeah, I should.
So when I first was reached out to about conjuring the Calabash, I said, okay, one, I felt schooled, I felt heard, and I felt like this is a sage priestess. I need to level up and hear what she has to say, because when you hear the right thing, some of the time it's like salt in your wound. You know it's healing, but oh, is it painful? And with her writing, I find that it's not painful, but it's a balm, right? Y'all remember the song, There's a
Okay.
Balm in Gilead? There is
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
balm that she is spelling and singing as loud as she possibly can, and she does not care who is listening or not listening. She knows it's here for her to tell. So that's my reason.
I
That
love.
is why I listen to her.
Thank
That
you.
is why I love to read her, because she is the real thing. And it's very hard for us to hear the real thing amidst all of the noise of, oh, do this kind of thing and do this kind of thing. And
Yeah,
isn't this
yeah,
cute? And I have
yeah.
it all cute and spread out on a TikTok.
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
what I'm doing. And I'm like, the work that we do as hoodoo workers, it isn't for somebody else's visual interpretation.
Right, right, right. And it's gonna be ugly and it's gonna be messy. You know what I'm saying? The table's gonna be a mess. The altar space is gonna be a mess. Whatever we're doing, we're gonna look a mess. So there isn't all of that, showmanship. We don't have time for that. You don't have time to put your, camera out and your lighting and all of that. If you're serious about the work, then you're going to be involved in it, and that's going to look like, you might get up with one roller in your hair or something, anything, a slipper on, whatever you got. You may get up butt naked because you got to get to work,
You got to get
whatever
to
that
work.
looks like. So you don't have time for all of the pretentiousness of it all. You have to do the work. And so I find that in your work as well. When Matt was suggested that we meet, right? We talk, it was like, oh my goodness, because for a long time you see people and it's like they're not writing for the people that look like them. They're writing to be heard by the larger group of people. And so with that, we always find it easy as people of color to be inclusive of everybody else when nobody
Hmm.
is that way with us,
hmm
right? And so when you find those writers who are saying, I'm speaking to my people, and everybody else, you can come along or not, you know,
Yeah,
but I'm talking to who I'm talking to, then you gravitate towards that. And so
yes, you do.
it's easy for me to say, I want those people to see what I'm doing. I want to be
Yeah.
blessed by their words, and
Yes.
I find that in
Yes.
both of you ladies, I was blessed by your words. And so yeah, yeah. So this for me, it was a no-brainer. What time we meeting? If we're meeting at 2 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm
Let's do
here.
it. 2 a.m.
It didn't
Yeah.
matter. It didn't matter,
Mm-mm,
because it's
mm-mm.
about the work. It's about what we do, how we are healing the community and the world how we do that. And we do that together.
Yeah.
And nobody's practice supersedes anybody else's. They come together, they join forces. So yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love that because, it's like that's who I love. That's what I love about this is that in this show, people, you're going to be watching people who do the work first and then happen to write a book in
Yeah.
order to share it.
Mm-hmm,
You are
mm-hmm,
looking
mm-hmm,
at
mm-hmm.
people who, from a very young age, have played around or kind of kept the record of the library, didn't know how all the pieces fit, but knew that we would have individually grow into a voice on behalf of the people for the ancestors. And that's what I absolutely love. And Miss Sherry, you know you do that. You know you do. You're just like looking like, what? Did I do that? I know your story, girl.
But it's
But
true.
it is
Yeah.
true. It
And we
is.
go through this. I find that I have this fine line of when I would get up every morning as a child, my mom would always tell me, remember, when you walk out that door, you represent your culture, your race, your gender.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to put on a little child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I find that most of us that work, live, play in Black bodies,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
every day we leave our house, we are
Mm-hmm.
subjected to
Yes.
people that want
Yes.
to judge
Mm-hmm.
and lift us up, but only high enough so
Mm-hmm.
that they can enjoy our skills and
Mm-hmm.
gifts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as we go into this Thanksgiving period, I woke up with a mindset of remembrance and mourning
Hmm.
because we are in the midst of divisiveness. We are in the midst of spiritual attack. We are
Yeah.
in the midst of people wanting to silence our community, people not wanting to even go to school, people wanting to
Mm-hmm.
take away our history, people wanting to do all of these things. But still, we're being asked to perform.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show up at work. Don't bring it up. Stop
Mm-hmm.
bringing up things. Don't dress the way you do. Wear your hair in this way. Don't you dare come in. I had someone ask me the other day, and I know this might be off topic. I had someone ask me the other day, how come I don't wear wigs
Yeah.
anymore?
Been there for that one as well. Yeah, 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 yeah. I just like you were talking about growing up and being told, who you represent. I used to tell my kids that when they were young, because white supremacy, it won't wait until you're 18. You know what I'm saying? So very young children, I've had kids in line, at school, and another kid who's white will say, I don't want to stand by that nigga, and you're thinking to yourself, right, right. Where to say you're 3 years old? You know what I'm saying? And this kid is the little kid, it's the black kid is looking like I don't get this. I don't understand. And so there isn't a time where you say, okay, now it happens. We always have to be prepared for it. We always have to show up. You're right. And the hair becomes the thing. I remember being evaluated at work and in the evaluator saying, oh, everything is great. But there's a part here that asks about, your hair, right? And I remember the guy saying, well, with white women, we can tell when their hair is kind of oily or it needs a wash, but you know, I don't know what to say about your hair. And I just remember sitting up thinking, okay, now where's this going? Because I'm not saying anything, but I'm going to sit up and look you in the eyes because you're going to tell me whatever it is you're going to say because you gave me the highest marks for everything else, the performance of everything else. And now we're about to talk about my hair. And so he got real nervous, right? And he's like, well, but I'm just gonna give you the five because you did great. But it's every year it's this thing
Every
about
year.
how or is there something else that you can kind of maybe do with the hair? And so yeah, it becomes this whole dialogue around all of that, right? things that and I tell people it's when they say, well, why do you bring that up in magical circles? Because I've been to other conventions, right? Why do you bring up racism? Because I can't just talk about fairies and all these other things. I have to talk about why my magic is necessary. And it's most potent and most needed when I'm dealing with racism, right? I see it all the time, and I can't not just me walk out the door and not deal with it. I have a son who's 16, who's tall, 6'4", and he's standing at
Mm,
the bus stop and he has to deal with it. So it's
mhm,
all of
mhm,
us, right?
mhm,
When
mhm.
my mother goes to the hospital, she has kidney disease, and you're faced with a white nurse who's sitting there kind of maybe talking to you one way. So she has to deal with it. So it's all of us dealing with it. So it is it's something that I see often. So I'm going to talk about it often. So it fits into my magic. It has to, right? Because it's about my survival. And that's how
Yes.
Hoodoo was born. That's how it was born. It's always been about that. How are we going to survive this
How are
place?
we going to
And
survive?
so our magic has to speak in that arena. So yeah, I've been there. I know that one. I know that one clear as day. Every year when those evaluations come around, I know that hair is going to be the last topic. It doesn't
It's going
matter
to
if
be a
it's
topic.
man or a woman. It's going to be the last thing. It's
It's
going to be
going
our
to be a
standoff.
topic.
You know. So
Yes,
yeah.
it's going to be a topic. And the the concern for people that may be listening and kind of go, why can't we? Right? Let me
Mhm,
ask you this. How many times on your evaluation has your hair been brought up? Has your speech been brought up? Has your persona been brought up? Can't you lessen that down? Can't
mhm,
you? It's back to that complicit
mhm,
ideology of systematic racism that says
mhm,
you have to behave in a certain way.
mhm,
Or on the opposite, when you have, which I love this show, and I know a lot of people didn't like it, but the Society of the Spiritual Negro. Okay, where you have to always placate and have this comfort that you have to
mhm,
give to your other brethren, where you kind of say, okay, I know that you're uncomfortable with me. So let
mhm,
me take it upon me to solve your comfort and give you more comfort. I'll lower
mhm,
my voice. I won't
mhm,
be as so excited. When we
mhm.
were first starting this recording, one of the things we were talking about is no, instead, let's bring it up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's not hold behind anything. We've been shunned so much. We've been shut up so much. We have been told to be silent ever since you laugh in a barrel. And we've
Yeah.
been
Oh
told,
yeah.
don't laugh in a
Mhm,
barrel, right?
mhm.
Well, I don't want us, I want us to be loud now. It is
Yeah.
so time.
I
Okay.
love
Mhm. It is. It
it.
really is. It really is.
It is
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It is
DDC,
time.
were you ready for this?
Oh, this is exactly what I was waiting for because for a very, very long time now, there needs to be conversation, right? We're all talking about we need to have conversations about, different people that are other. We need to have these conversations. And then everybody goes crickets
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
Hmm.
nobody knows what to say.
Mhm,
And, and this type of thing until you pick up this book. This
Hmm.
book, you know what to say. This book, you
Yes,
know what to say. She is inviting us into sacredness of lived experience without pulling any punches.
absolutely.
That's what I love about this. Fierce. Fierce. It's
mhm,
like, oh, you wanted a conversation, and it's almost like this is how I see it, Mawiya. You're sitting at this table waiting for people to have this conversation, and nobody's saying anything because everybody is like afraid to say anything. And you're like, okay, well, let's talk about white supremacy. Let's
mhm,
talk about marginalized group. Let's talk about the LGBTQ plus.
mhm,
Let's talk
mhm,
about like what else do you want us to talk about? So
mhm,
it is so beautiful because that's why I call you a goddess because you're just like, well, let me bring up the topics that we actually need to address. That's why I
mhm,
call you an
mhm,
educator because you
mhm,
call it out and yeah, powerful. For me, my voice is still developing. Like it wasn't until about 5 years ago that somebody looked at me and said, Oh, what do you want to be called? Should we call you Indigenous, or should we call you First Nation, or should we call you what else? Do you like the name Indian? And to be honest, I wish I
Mhm.
had so much fire because I looked at them and I thought to myself, wait, I got a say in this? I didn't know. I
Mhm.
didn't know that I don't know what
Mhm.
I want to be called, but
Yeah.
thank you for
Yeah.
asking.
Mhm.
And so my voice is still trying to find the development with the red body and with the Navajo-ness. And I have a lot of conversations with Sherry about this. And and Mawiya just is like, oh, that let's go into it. What gave, how did you get your how did you find the courage
Mhm.
to come out as a voice going, here, guys, this is what we need to talk about. And by the way, young ones, if you are having difficulty, here is the truth. Here is the truth. I refer to your first book as like an encyclopedia that you can go through to start finding, like, why does my body feel like this in a certain
Right, right, right,
situation?
right.
And then you give us the history of why
Mhm.
different situations. So anyway, that's a horrible question. What gave you the courage? But this took a lot of courage, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am an ally for you.
Yeah. For me, it was always, both books were about sitting with my ancestors, forming this circle and having this ancestral time. And my grandfathers always came forward, right, on both sides. And so it was a lot of just talking about their own experiences and saying that the people need more, right? There should be this opening where you just go into what's happening now, but tie it to a lot of, what we've gone through and how we've relied upon those individuals to help pull us forward. So it was, talking to clients, talking to people, talking to family members after that, and just really building a sort of an outline, on what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say it, and being, asking them were they okay with, the inclusion of it, and everybody said yeah, yeah, because they felt like, their stories would resonate with other people who were feeling dealing with some of the same things. So for me, it was just I guess I really wasn't fearful. I knew that it was going to be a lot, and if anything, I was worried that they would say it was too much. It would be too big of a book. But then they were like, "We're good with it," and I was like, "Okay," you know. And I wanted to have not just formulas and the biographical information or the client, but wanted to also include the book list, and other things that they could use in as well, because and like you talk about transformation of ourselves, right? Being a spiritual disruptor is a part of where I am now, and this, so I utilize all of my Yoruba understandings. I utilize the Santeria, all of that, but also the hoodoo, and then just the whatever comes, right? It's whatever comes. If it's the palo mayombe, whatever it is, it becomes a part of what I'm actually doing at the time. So for me, it was just the need to have other people understand that it just doesn't end with doing the work, whatever you find in the book. It's also about educating ourselves, right? Educating ourselves to our past, our present, how we look at things, transforming, our reality. James Baldwin talked about transforming the reality. If we can transform how people see reality, then we could transform and change how we see the world, right? And so I really feel as though for me, it's about reading and keeping myself educated. A lot of young people ask, can they use the book as activists? I had a young man recently at the book signing in New Orleans, and I said, yeah, definitely you can. But also, don't just look at the work, look at the reading list as well. And you might want to center your group around, a book a time at a time, and start to get that information from that as well. So for me, I wanted it to be a manual for everybody, no matter what age you are, right? I wanted
Mhm.
us all to be able to pull it in, do the work, whether we're together or you might be somewhere in another city, another state, another country, but we can still set aside time to do the works together. And then that, and creates this vortex, where we can have that to manifest change in our lives.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Sherry, do
Mm.
you have anything?
I, that courage again, this is, This is something where I'm still getting my education. And I was raised in a certain way where I was told you can be Church of God in Christ Black,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you
Hmm.
can't be Yoruba Black.
Right,
You
right.
can't be African traditional religions Black because
Hmm.
that will push you over the edge. That'll make you more into those Mississippi roots, those roots of your father,
Hmm.
that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
thing. So it took me
Oh yeah.
until I was in my late 30s before I
Hmm.
would even embrace hoodoo
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
was like, I'm Christian. I'm just like you all. I wanted to still pass. I wanted to still
Hmm.
write. And so for me, it was that courageousness of looking at your reading list
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
saying, look at how much I don't know at 50.
Hmm.
Look at
Hmm.
how much I don't know. So I applaud and thank you for your courageousness for those of us that didn't get brought. And you're now saying it's okay. It's not too late.
Yeah. Yeah. I was, I think for me, like I always, I grew up, went to Catholic school. So I can remember being in second grade and the Bishop Perry at the time, who was a Black guy, he would talk about Marie Laveau as being a saint, right?
Yes.
And so that for me, it stuck with me. And I remember sitting down to write this book, just actually going back to those ideas where the two never should mesh, right? You would think, right? That
You would never think
nobody
that.
else
Yeah.
would say that. Nobody else said that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
just the fact of understanding that and then saying that I can, practice the Yoruba culture and still do this, right? I can bring this over to here. This can gel, and I tell people that because people often ask, well, is it okay that if I do this? And yeah, why not?
Why
The
not?
more power, you got more power if you're using it all, right? And you're
Hmm. Hmm.
using it in a way to change your world and hopefully the world of the people you love and your community and all of us, right? So it all blends together. And once we do it, when we say those words, whether we use the Bible, whatever, if we write it ourselves, when we say those words, it becomes a spell word. It becomes power. Now we are reconfiguring. I always say reverse engineering the language, right? The language that was supposed to keep us subjugated, supposed to keep us enslaved. Now it's in our mouth. And I say to people, it's like somebody breaking into your house, right? They break into your house and they drop their gun. You're not going to pick it up and give it back to them,
Right.
hopefully, right? You're going to pick it up and use it on them. Well, that's
Yes,
the
you
way
are.
we do these words. That's how we transform this language, right? So this biblical language that people are afraid of oftentimes and say, well, we can't use it. It shouldn't be a part of this because I pulled away from that. You're reverse engineering it, baby.
Please
You're
do.
using it now, and now it is taking on a new form because now it's no longer in the mouth of the oppressor. It's in the mouth of those who are oppressed. So,
Absolutely. And isn't that exactly what we did? When I was writing Hoodoo Guide to the Bible, that was the main cause, was my
yes.
father who passed away when I was 16. He always would tell me that you don't use those words that are in the Bible to continue to put you down, right? This was come from a legacy of ancestors that wanted to empower you and lift you up.
Yes, yes, yes. Which is
So
why
please,
when they were saying when they were giving us the Bible, right? They took parts
yes,
out, right? That's why they had this nigger Bible. This, what I'm saying? They
right.
didn't, and that's why they sat inside the churches for so long to
Yes, they
watch,
did.
what
They
happened,
were
right? Because
watching.
they didn't want you
Yes,
to have any empowerment, right? They wanted to make sure you reverberate, you said exactly what they wanted you to say, the passages that they thought would keep you, at bay, and then they would go on about their day and have their service, right? And that was
right.
supposed to be it. So yeah, transform that language, and it's
Absolutely.
and it's and it's all of the languages when we talk about it, because when if we're here living here, then we're not, that kin to the Yoruba language. We don't know it that well, right?
We don't
We
know
can
it that well.
recite and we can see what the meanings are, but we
Right.
still have to pull it in. We have to become indoctrinated into that language. We have to transform that language to where we are right now. When I do
Hmm.
divination
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
people in Yoruba, I'm talking about where you are here in this place, right? That we call the
Hmm.
West.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not going to divine for you and tell you to go get roots and herbs, take into where they are in Yoruba land. I can't do that. You
You
can't have
can't do
that.
that.
I have
Yes.
to talk about what's here, right? What is right here. And if that is, you got to go get some collard greens and we're going to wash those and we're going to do that, whatever that is that we're going to do, we're going to use what's here. in this space. And so we do that same thing with the language. So it all is necessary. It is very necessary. It will heal us, right?
Yes,
And
it
it has
will.
also the potential to send out, against our enemies, whatever it is we want to send out against them. So yeah.
Absolutely. It is the ultimate love of deliverance.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love it. Again, listeners, what you're listening to is not just some spiritual woo-woo. What you're listening to is embodied spirit through ancestral understanding and being able to move forward in your life right now, which makes it less spirit over here on Sundays and spirit embodied here. And let's move forward in the ancestors. So I do want to get into like what you want to share with the people in just a minute, but before we do, for the listeners, who is allowed to read all these beautiful books with Sherry Shone, that Hoodoo Lady, and the Conjure? Who is allowed to,
Mm.
out of respect, I am in your grandmother's home. What can we touch? What can we look at? Who is allowed to read this book in each of your opinions?
For me, I think that when I think about reading it, everybody should read it, right? For me, most importantly, everybody should read it. I'm always asked that, especially by white people, and I say, well, now you can get a better understanding of an appreciation for the spiritual practices of people who don't look like you, right? As opposed to what you see on TV or what you conjure in your mind, right? You can actually see for yourself that it does have a basis in reality, right? It is a practice that is sustaining, and why it was necessary. So for them, I look at it as more of a historical, right, understanding, and hopefully that they can get a deeper appreciation and stop appropriating practices that they don't fit into. But for people of color, I think we've all dealt with this whole subjugation, right? We've all dealt with oppression and colonization. So in growing up in New Orleans, I always was taught to give reverence to the Chitimacha tribe, right? And they helped the African people, when they were trying to get away from plantations, right? Showed them how to use the cayenne pepper, right, to make sure it got into the dog's nostrils and everything like that. So the hoodoo became a part of both groups of people, right? It became their understanding and their blending of their ideas about how to use the herbs in that area. So for me, it's for people who have dealt with the subjugation, who understand what that is like, and it's not that white people can't do things, but I always say you have folk magic, you have your practices, right? You have what, and they'll say, well, I just want to do this, or I want to, and then I will say, well, now we're getting into the colonization part of the story, right? Where you're trying to colonize a practice. You just want to own a practice, right? And so that is not, learn, educate yourself. If you're doing that much, then you're doing what you need to be doing. And then when you are able to speak up, when you're in communion with individuals who look like you, and there's none of us around, right? You're able to be really to speak up and move from being an ally to actually being an accomplice to our freedom and our liberation, right? Because now you're saying those things to those people when we're not there and calling them on it, right? Calling them on the fact that you might not have any person of color, a Hoodoo practitioner, Yoruba practitioner, whatever on your panel, right? Or you might just have one, just have a token. Now you can say, no, we need to have more than that, right? You have a reason for saying those things. So it becomes an educational tool for them. And that's the way that I have been taught for me. And it sits well with me because I'm good with saying you have, your own, practices and do your thing and I can do my thing. Sometimes things do overlap. Sometimes herbs overlap. And that's okay. It's okay to say, I have mine and you have yours. If it's not okay, then you need to check yourself, right? You need to deal with you. And I can't help you deal with you. Because now we're getting into the fact of you trying to own something. And this is Hoodoo is not on an auction block. It is not out for the highest bidder.
Mm.
It was not born from that, right? So you have to respect that.
That
Amen. Well, yes, and yes, and yes. Yes. When I was first writing, I would hoodoo for everyone It originally was not called that. And it was more about making sure that ancestors, heroes, and sheroes would be more highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember working with the publisher, and the publisher saying, well, we want you to do what you need, but we can't make it an anthology of everything that's happening across Black history. That might be too large. It might be, whatever. And it was in my own space that I said, okay, then I'm going to dedicate the first few chapters to Black history and knowing what it's like to be in a Black body.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to ask the question, as you did, Mawiyah, why do you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Is it because it truly is speaking to you, or because it's another thing for you to control? If it's another thing for you to control and take over and try to say, but look at me, I can do this too, that's different. Because even when we go into, when I was a child, I did a book report on Langston Hughes poems. And I remember my teacher saying, ooh, someone similar to that is E. E. Cummings. Could you do E. E. Cummings? And I said, no. Why would I want to do E. E. Cummings? Well, because that's a more well known, and it wasn't until I took my book report home and my mother said, don't you dare write about E.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it got put in your heart to write about Langston Hughes, you're going to write to Langston Hughes. And if she has
Mm-hmm.
anything to say, she
Mm-hmm.
can come talk to Nora June. So many of us, our children don't have that in their lives anymore,
Right. Right.
right? And
Right.
so I
Right.
want them to say, yes, it's okay for me to read this book, but also remember, you have that privilege to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Our children were indoctrinated in learning about every other history but their own from birth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They learn about Baby Shark first, and
Mm-hmm.
they learn about maybe Martin Luther King and by the time they're 16.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's all they learn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They never learn about the Green Book. They
No.
never learn about systematic geography. They
Mm-hmm.
never learn about redlining. They never learn about how the black dollar is there. They never knew there was a Harlem Renaissance. There's
Mm-mm.
so
Mm-mm.
many. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, pick up our
Mm-hmm.
books.
Yeah.
Start
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
learn some of the reference material that we talk about,
Mm.
and just let's stop teaching that cycle,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
There are
Yes.
many Black poets and artists
Mhm.
and restaurants and things. And then maybe you'll start looking at other things too and going, well, why is it that we never taught
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
So
Yeah.
that's
And
why I
and I
say,
think
yes,
and I
please
love
read our
that.
books. Please
Yeah,
read
I
our
love that
books.
about both our books because what they do is they give you the benefit of understanding this historical aspect. We don't just jump into, these works. Do this, and do that, and you'll find love, and you'll find you know we want you to really understand how this was born and why it's necessary, right? Why it was first necessary, but why it is even still necessary today. And so I think, yeah, I agree, I totally agree. And when we all come to it, not just people who look like us, but when all of us come to the stories, right, to the books, then they get a deeper understanding because now it's being written by the people who know it, who know these stories, right? and and
Yes.
and so it's not written by somebody who said, well, my grandmother, she was friends with this little black lady who taught us this, and so now I'm doing this because the little black lady taught me all of these things, and so I can give it to you because it came from a little black lady. So it can't possibly be, there's nothing white supremacist about the whole thing
There's nothing
because
about
she
that.
told it to me, and now I'm
Yeah.
doing it, and I'm doing it for you. Because we have this thing with us, right? Where a lot of times, if it's written by us, we won't get it. But if somebody who doesn't look like us comes along and says, this is it, everybody wants to run out and buy it, make it a bestseller. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Hmm.
And we
Hmm.
do it we do it a lot in our commerce with clothing, right? A black
Oh,
person makes some
yes.
jeans. We're not buying those jeans. What? $60? I'm not paying that. White person, $60. Oh, yes. You know what I'm
And
saying?
more.
These are These are the jeans to wear, And
Yes.
so, we got to stop that. We have to get the information from who it's supposed to come from, right? Because that's where the blessings come from. The
Yes.
stories that we tell, not from somebody claiming that they got it from somebody else and all of this, and it's better because it's them, right? It looks like them, so it must be more authentic.
It must
How
be
can I
better.
trust you? Right, it must be. So yeah, I agree with that. We all need to learn these lessons. And I find that often with people who look like us, right? Trying to fight against that internalized racist oppression,
Oh yes. Oh
those
yes.
ideas that I don't want to deal with that, right? That is some backwoods stuff, that is some
Hmm.
African
Hmm.
stuff, that is whatever
Hmm.
it is,
Hmm.
but it's not something that I need to be doing because I'm trying to fit into Western society, right? And I have to have my beliefs have to fit in, I have to look like it. I'm going to wear that wig, right? I'm
I
going
know.
to do all of these things and I'm going to blend in. And anybody who comes along not looking like that, they better not come near me because I don't want these people to know that I'm one of them, that
Right.
kind of
Right.
idea, that kind of thinking. And so I find, when I do workshops or talk to people, that those people, they'll get up and they'll cry or whatever, or storm out of the room or whatever. I
Yes.
just keep moving on. And sometimes I get from the white people this whole victimization thing. They don't want to be confronted with white
Yes.
supremacy, right? And so it becomes this whole idea of, well, that was then. And I say, no, that is now, right? I can prove it to you. I can give you examples, and I do in the book of now. I talk about then, but I
And
tie
now.
them together because there is no there. When we have a 19-year-old Black woman meeting a man, and she's thinking she's going out on a date with this guy, and he chops her up, right? It kills her. I mean, that isn't a back then. That is a now thing,
That is now.
right? That is
2025.
now.
Yes.
Right, right. And because of hate, because I don't like you, but because I don't like myself, I'm putting myself out there to be with this person because I'm looking for somebody else. Because everybody says online, they're going to love you. They take care of you. They want you.
Yes.
That
Yes.
kind of thinking. So, the book is about how we challenge ourselves to move away from that kind of thought process, right?
We have to
It's
move away
also
from it.
about that. It's totally about that. And so when I talk to younger people, we often sit down and have those conversations, young women, right? Because on the internet, there's a lot of hate between Black men and Black women, right? The
Yes.
young people, how are we going to deal with these relationships? Why is that? Where's it coming from?
Where's it
You
coming
don't know
from?
every Black woman, you don't know every Black man, so you can't possibly, hate all of them. So we have
Yes.
those dialogues about that and how we can transform that thinking, right?
Yeah.
And for a lot of them, it's a new experience because they're just going along with whatever's on the internet. Social media says that's the way it is, so that's the way we have to
It
handle it.
must be.
That's not the way, right? Right. It must be right. It's on the internet, right? And so, how do we challenge those ideas? And so, a lot of that's in the book list as well. There are different books that speak to those things. So, for me, magic is about the whole person, right? It's about how we see ourselves. It's about the emotional, even before we get into lighting candles and, burning
Mm-hmm.
herbs and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
What type of emotional growth are you bringing? You know what I'm saying? Are you
Yeah.
emotionally immature? Because if you're emotionally immature, then it's not going to work for you anyway,
It's not gonna
right?
work for you.
It's not going to work
You
for
need to
you.
grow up first.
Yeah, you need to grow up. So I do work with therapists, right? I work with a woman who is a Yoruba practitioner who also wants to use the book in therapy. I work with a man who's a Yoruba practitioner who used the Calabash book in therapy with women.
Oh yes.
And men, right? So yeah, it becomes just a dialogue about our psyche as well as our
Mhm.
magic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Because it is so spirit. It is so therapeutic.
Yeah. That's one of the points that I love to make is I have this concept that I promote about the four bodies of existence, which is the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. And when I talk to true practitioners, people who live and then end up writing a book about it, I see those that all of their spirituality comes out in their physical life, their emotional life, their mental life, their maturity, and that it has to get to this point that it's supposed to be all of you, it's
Mm,
supposed to be
Hmm.
all of you and
Hmm.
yes.
all of the things. And I 100% agree about, you can pick up any book and just go, well, let me see what the spell is. And it's
Right.
like, that is not going, that's going to backfire because
Yeah.
you don't know who you're praying to.
Hmm.
You
There's that.
don't, there's that part,
Right, right,
you
right.
don't know how this is going to disrupt your dreams, your emotional, it's going to challenge you. It really is about the respect around it all. So
Hmm.
I could talk,
GDC, may I ask you,
of course.
who's okay to read your books?
This is, you know what? No one, because no, I'm just kidding. Scary question. Because that's, it's actually interesting because the reason
Right.
why I wrote that or asked that question is because I actually am working on a book, Shamanism for Beginners by Llewellyn. And so when I go back into my history, I'm like, well, shamanism didn't come from the indigenous Native American, but we practiced it. We just didn't call it shamanism. Well, I also see a lot of European cultures practicing the same thing with the same drums, but they don't call it shamanism. Wait, if you go to, all around the world, and so I've really had to stretch my mind and keep it appropriate, yet big enough. And so
Mm,
and I think what happened to me was I came down to exactly what you two wonderful women came to is this conversation about, well, maybe you're going to read it for historical reasons, maybe you're reading it for educational readings, but if you are actually going to practice this, let me tell you a little bit about the stories. Get into the reasoning. Let this magic be embodied, emotionally understood, intellectually understood, and then let's see what your spirit does. And so, yeah,
mhm,
thank you for that question,
mhm.
Sherry.
Yes.
So, with that, we're about ready to wrap up too soon. I would love to hear, Mawiya, is what would you like to tell the people today? In your own words, what has been on your heart? What messages do you feel is important to share?
Yeah. I think, and this one is not on you, Sherry. This one's the water one for you. I think for me, just don't feel like your magic has to be so big, right? That you have to get all these things and bring all these things in order for it to work for you. I'm a big proponent of water, just using the water, right? Pulling out that glass of water, reciting a psalm over that water, saying a song, whatever's on your heart over that water, and allowing that water, pouring that water into the earth, and allowing that to go to wherever it needs to go for your healing, wherever it needs to go to protect you, thanking the water reserves, right, where it came from, but also just allowing that to be, this beacon of hope for you, this change for your life. And that's not something that costs you a lot of money, right? You just put it in a cup, a glass, or whatever you're using, and say what you need to say over it and allow it to go. And you'll start to see your life start to transform the more you do it, right? And so that's a practice that I try to do every morning, right? And for me, it's just it becomes a blessing that is not, so grand that anybody, you feel like, oh, I can't do it, I can't remember to do it. Do it whenever you remember that day, you know, and then it becomes your protection, but it also becomes protection for the community.
Hmm. 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 And I'm going to go, blessing on that one, I'm going to go to the wind. So
Mm,
my messages for today are centered around the words, let the words of my mouth, right, that come out. And I want you all to be encouraged that you're better because you speak better.
Mm,
You better because the words that are coming out of your mouth, the way that you speak about not just other people, but yourself.
mhm,
Those things are life changing. Those things are transformative.
mm, mm,
Even as we're talking about Thanksgiving time, holiday time, many of us know it's a time of remembrance and mourning and grief for us,
mm,
many times. It isn't about being happy and spending money we don't have. I wrote a post about that this morning because I woke up at 6 with that on my heart. It's about
Mm-hmm.
those words. When you look at yourself in the mirror, I had a great sage woman tell me when you get yourself up in the mirror, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see a beautiful ancestor. Whatever you see in that, please make it that first. Don't first start talking about your acne, your scars,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm going to work today. It's so sad. It
Mm-hmm.
was a bad day yesterday. It's going to be a bad day today. You know who you
Right.
see? You see a beautiful black woman.
That's it.
And that's
That's
all
it.
I see.
That's it. And kiss that image. Give it a
Kiss
kiss.
that
There
image.
you go. There you go. Put on that
Put that
lipstick.
wind on that.
There you go.
Girl, right? What does Jennifer Lewis say? She said, when I get up in the morning, I brush my
Uh-huh.
teeth and I look
Uh-huh.
in the mirror and I say, you beautiful bitch.
I know that's right. Girl.
That's my words for today.
I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness.
I cursed on your show. Sorry.
No, fuck it.
That's right. Fuck it.
We love you, bitches. I love it, love it, love it. Oh my goodness. I again am over the moon. I really am happy to be alive at this point in history where
Mm-hmm.
people like us can come together and speak our truth and share it. That's the whole thing with belief being and beyond. What you believe in constitutes how you behave in the world, but there's always something more. There's always something beyond. And if any of this kind of made you curious and you want to pick up a special book, this is Mawiya's newest book, and it is all about stories. Now we understand why, and magic for liberation. For liberation. It's hoodoo saints and root warriors. Oh my goodness. Of course, conjuring the calabash mystery. You want to know what that is? Pick up the book. And of course, my shout out to Miss Sherry, that hoodoo lady, Hoodoo for Everyone, as well as the Hoodoo Guide to the Bible. It's so beautiful to be able to sit in circle with you, with your ancestors, and with your voice. So thank you, everyone. Be well. I love you guys. Hit the like buttons, all of that. Share this with somebody who you know might want to be educated and or liberated. And I love you guys. We will see you on the flippity flip.